October 6th, 2002. A quiet Sunday in Richwoods, Missouri. 11-year-old Shawn Hornbeck grabs his green bike, yells a quick, "See you later, Mom," and pedals off down the road. He doesn't know it, but this is the last time he'll see his parents for over 4 years. And for his mom, Pam, those words will echo in her mind every single night. Over and over, because for a long time, everyone believed Shawn Hornbeck was dead. Except he wasn't. He was alive. And he wasn't far. He was riding his bike. Just not the one he left with. Wearing new clothes. A new name. Living a life that wasn't his. And when the police finally found him, he wasn't alone. There was another boy. A boy who had vanished just days earlier. The same way. In the same area. And when investigators connected the dots, they realized something horrifying. Shawn had been watching his own disappearance unfold on the news for years. From the couch of the man who took him, let's rewind. Shawn Hornbeck was your typical Midwestern kid. Freckles, bowl cut, loud laugh. He lived with his mom Pam and his stepdad Craig in a small town surrounded by forest, farms, and not much else. The kind of place where you could leave your doors unlocked and nobody worried. But on that October afternoon, Shawn never made it to his friend's house. In fact, he barely made it a few blocks. On a narrow gravel road just minutes from his house, a rusted white pickup truck pulled over. The driver leaned out, a scruffy man with a mustache. "Hey kid," he said, "you know how to get to Highway 47? Shawn, being helpful, pointed. "Yeah, it's back that way." That's when the man opened the door, stepped out, and punched Shawn square in the face. The bike hit the gravel. Shawn hit the dirt. And before he could even scream, he was thrown into the truck. The door slammed, and the world went black. Back home, dinner got cold. Pam checked the clock. Then again, then again. By 9 p.m., Shawn's name was on a police report. By midnight, every patrol car in the county was on the lookout. The FBI was called. Canines were brought in. Helicopters scanned the woods. And for weeks, the town transformed into a war room. Flyers, press conferences, TV interviews. But no Shawn. Only a single clue. His bike, found in a ditch, rear wheel spinning. That image, just the wheel turning in the wind, would haunt his parents forever. Now here's where it gets even darker. Shawn wasn't dead. He was being held. In plain sight. Just 50 miles away, in a rundown apartment in Kirkwood, Missouri. The man who took him? His name was Michael Devlin. Pizza shop manager. Quiet. Keeps to himself. Nobody suspected him. He let Shawn play outside. Ride a bike, go to the mall. He even enrolled him in school under a fake name. Shawn Devlin, his adopted son. And somehow, it worked. People just assumed Shawn was his kid. He even had friends, teachers, neighbors. But behind closed doors, it was a prison. Devlin threatened to kill his family if Shawn ever tried to escape. He beat him, abused him, brainwashed him, until Shawn stopped trying to fight. He became someone else. Years passed. 4 long years. The news moved on. The town moved on. But Pam never did. She knew her son was out there, somewhere. She started a foundation, put up billboards, talked to reporters any chance she got, even when others told her to let go, to grieve, to move on. She couldn't, because something inside her was screaming, "He's alive." And then, another boy disappeared. January 8th, 2007. A 13-year-old named Ben Ownby was walking home from school in Beaufort, Missouri, when a white truck sped past him. Moments later, a witness saw that same truck parked on the side of the road. And the boy? Gone, just like Shawn, but this time there was a clue. The witness, a teenager, got a partial license plate. It was barely readable. 3 letters, a vague description of the truck. But it was enough. Investigators cross-referenced every truck owner in the area. Hundreds of names, and one stood out. Michael J. Devlin. 2 detectives showed up at his apartment 4 days later. Routine questioning, they said. Just a follow-up. Devlin opened the door. And that's when they saw it. In the corner of the room, trying to stay out of sight, a teenage boy, quiet, thin, and watching them with wide, terrified eyes. "Hey there," one officer said. "What's your name?" The boy paused, looked at Devlin, then back at the officers. His voice was almost a whisper. "Ben." The room went silent. "Ben Ownby?" the officer asked. The boy nodded. And then, from the hallway, another voice. "I'm Shawn Hornbeck." Time froze. That moment made national headlines. The press called it the Missouri Miracle. 2 missing boys, found alive, in the same apartment. Devlin was arrested on the spot, charged with kidnapping, assault, and countless other crimes. Shawn was reunited with his family after 1,558 days. Pam fell to her knees when she saw him. He was taller, older, but it was him. He was finally home. But this isn't a fairy tale. Not yet. Because what happened during those 4 years was horrifying. And Shawn? He wasn't the same boy who left on his bike that day. When Shawn came home, he wasn't Shawn anymore. Not completely. His smile was different. His eyes were guarded. And his voice, once loud and carefree, had turned quiet, careful, like he was always checking his words before letting them out. Because for 4 years, every word had been monitored, every move judged, every choice punished. Devlin didn't just take Shawn's body, he took his identity, bit by bit, day by day, until Shawn forgot what freedom even felt like. And that made going home complicated. At first, there were cameras everywhere. Reporters camped outside the house. Satellite vans parked on the street. Everyone wanted a piece of the miracle boy. Shawn, who had once been invisible, was now on every screen in America. But no one saw the truth behind those headlines. They didn't see how he flinched when someone raised their voice, or how he locked his bedroom door every night, or how he couldn't sleep unless a lamp was on just bright enough to keep the darkness out. Because darkness, to Shawn, wasn't just the absence of light. It was 4 years of silence, of pain, of pretending everything was fine so he wouldn't be killed. And it wasn't just Shawn who struggled. Pam and Craig didn't recognize their own son. They tried to comfort him, but he barely spoke. He wasn't angry. He wasn't distant. He was just hollow, as if the part of him that laughed, cried, and loved had been erased, and they didn't know how to bring it back. Behind closed doors, Shawn would sit on his bed, headphones on, playing the same songs over and over. Most days, he wouldn't leave the house. And when he did, he wore a hoodie, pulled low over his face. He avoided eye contact, flinched when people touched him. He didn't want to talk about what happened. Not to his parents, not to a therapist, not to anyone. But eventually, he did start talking, just not about the pain. He talked about video games, about music, about cars, anything that didn't remind him of Devlin. Slowly, he built a new identity on top of the broken one. And little by little, Shawn Hornbeck began to resurface. Still, the public had questions. Why didn't he run? Why didn't he scream for help? Why didn't he escape? And these questions? They weren't innocent. They carried judgment, suspicion, doubt. Some cruel people suggested Shawn hadn't really been a victim, that he had gone along with it, that he enjoyed the freedom, that he could have left any time. And that's the most disgusting part of this story. Because those people didn't understand the kind of prison Shawn lived in. The kind with no bars. Just fear. Devlin didn't chain Shawn to a wall. He didn't need to. He chained him to a threat. If you try to leave, he said, I'll kill your parents. I'll find them. And I'll make you watch. Shawn was 11. He believed him. He wasn't free. He was terrified. Every minute, every hour, every day. And for 4 years, he survived by being what Devlin wanted him to be. Quiet, obedient, invisible. That wasn't consent. That was survival. Eventually, the truth came out. In court, prosecutors revealed what really happened in that apartment. How Devlin beat Shawn for weeks until he stopped crying. How he gave him a new name and forged documents to pass him off as his son. How he let him out, not out of kindness, but because he knew Shawn was too scared to run. He'd broken him. That's what monsters do. Devlin pled guilty to multiple counts of kidnapping, sexual assault, and attempted murder. He received 74 life sentences. 74. One for each of the 74 charges brought against him. He'll never see daylight again. But even with Devlin behind bars, Shawn's life wasn't magically fixed. Because trauma doesn't disappear with a verdict. It lingers, in memories, in habits, in nightmares. And for Shawn, healing wasn't a straight line. It was messy. Some days he laughed. Others he screamed. Some nights he slept. Others he lay awake until sunrise. But there was one thing that helped him more than anything else, telling his story. When he finally really opened up, it wasn't to a therapist or a news anchor. It was to other kids. At a high school assembly, he stood in front of hundreds of students, voice shaking, hands clenched, and said, "My name is Shawn Hornbeck. I was kidnapped when I was 11 years old. I was missing for 4 years, and I came home." Silence. Then, applause. Not the kind of applause you give out of pity. The kind you give when someone survives the impossible. The kind that says, "We believe you." And from that moment on, Shawn decided to use his voice, to fight back, not against Devlin, but against the silence that keeps victims quiet. He and his parents launched the Shawn Hornbeck Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping families with missing children. They offered support, advice, even money for search efforts. And more importantly, they showed parents, don't give up, ever. Shawn spoke at conferences, on TV, in classrooms. He became a symbol, not just of survival, but of resilience. And over time, something incredible happened. He stopped being the miracle boy from the headlines and started becoming just Shawn again. A kid, a teenager, then a young man, someone who liked motorcycles, video games, pranks, someone who smiled with his eyes again. But life wasn't done throwing him curveballs, because not everyone from that era survived. Ben Ownby, the other boy found with Shawn, went back to his family too. He tried to live a normal life. He never spoke publicly about what happened. Ever. His family asked for privacy, and most people respected that. But in 2013, just 6 years after his rescue, Ben was hit by a drunk driver while riding his motorcycle. He was 19. He survived, but barely. Multiple surgeries, months in recovery. Another trauma stacked on top of the first. He pulled through, but it left him shaken. And it reminded everyone that just because you survive something doesn't mean you're safe from what comes after. Shawn visited him in the hospital. They didn't talk much, just sat there. Two boys connected by an experience no one else could understand. Sometimes words aren't necessary. Meanwhile, Pam and Craig continued their work with the foundation. They helped locate dozens of missing children, supported countless families, and advocated for legal reforms in Missouri to improve response times and expand Amber Alerts. They turned their nightmare into a mission, And Shawn? He found love. In 2017, he got engaged. Quiet ceremony, no press. Just family and close friends. He wanted that part of his life to be his, not a headline. And as of today, Shawn lives quietly. No spotlight, no drama. Just a man who went through hell and made it back. But his story isn't over, because there's one final twist, and it changes everything. That final twist doesn't come from Shawn. It comes from the man who stole him. Years after his conviction, Michael Devlin did something no one expected. He started talking. From behind bars, he began writing letters. Not to Shawn, not to his victims' families, but to journalists, true crime writers, even amateur investigators. And in those letters, he dropped hints about other kids, other towns, other trips. At first, authorities dismissed it as manipulation, a way for Devlin to stay relevant, to control the narrative even from a cell. But one letter in particular stood out. In it, Devlin claimed he had been preparing to take a third child. He didn't name names, but he described a route, a neighborhood, a park, and when investigators compared it to records, it matched a real location. One where a child had gone missing for a few hours in 2006, but was later found, disoriented and unable to explain what had happened. Could it have been a failed abduction? A test run? Nobody knows for sure. But it made one thing clear. Devlin hadn't planned to stop. Shawn was never the end. He was a chapter in a much darker book, and knowing that, it changed how people saw the case. Suddenly, Shawn wasn't just a survivor. He was the boy who stopped a serial predator. If Devlin hadn't been caught when he was, there's no telling how many other lives might have been destroyed. That thought haunted investigators, and it fueled Pam and Craig even more. Their foundation shifted focus slightly from just rescue to prevention. They started working directly with schools, developing awareness programs for young kids, teaching them to recognize red flags, to trust their instincts, to speak up. And in 2010, something incredible happened. A boy in southern Missouri went missing for 6 hours. His parents panicked. Police deployed search teams. And then, the boy was found in the back room of a man's home he had followed for candy. The man? Registered sex offender. But thanks to something the boy remembered from a school assembly one hosted by the Hornbeck Foundation, he managed to stay calm, look for a phone, and dial 911 when the man stepped outside. He was rescued before anything worse could happen. That boy later wrote a letter to Shawn. "You don't know me," he said, "but you saved me." That's when it really hit Shawn. Everything he went through every night in that apartment, every year he lost, might actually mean something. He didn't just survive. He made sure others would too. Still, trauma has a way of hiding in quiet places. In 2018, Shawn took a step back from the public eye. He shut down the foundation's website, canceled appearances, deleted social media. Friends said he was exhausted. And can you blame him? Living as a symbol is heavy. Sometimes you need to just live as a person. But the people who met him, the kids he helped, the parents he comforted never forgot. And in the years since, his name has become something different. Not a headline, a legacy. In criminology classes, his case is studied for its psychological complexity. In law enforcement training, it's used as an example of long-term abduction dynamics. And in schools, his face is still on slides that teach children about safety, not as a victim, but as a fighter. In 2020, a filmmaker approached Shawn about adapting his story into a limited series. For the first time in years, he agreed. But on one condition: no savior complex, he said. Tell it like it was, messy, complicated, real. And that's what they did. The series premiered in 2023 to critical acclaim. No dramatic music, no glamorization, Just a slow, heartbreaking, human look at a boy who disappeared and came back. The final scene showed Shawn walking into his childhood bedroom, older, stronger, and sitting on the bed where it all began. He picks up an old photograph of himself, smiles, then quietly turns off the lamp. Fade to black. No music. Just silence. That silence said everything. Because for 4 years, Shawn's life was a scream no one could hear. Now the world listens. And what it hears is hope. By the time the series aired, Shawn was already living a completely different life. Far from Missouri. Far from the memories. He'd moved to a quiet coastal town, started working in graphic design, and spent most of his free time outdoors, surfing, hiking, rebuilding motorcycles. The people who met him there didn't know his past, and he liked it that way. He didn't lie, but he didn't volunteer either. Because sometimes, starting over doesn't mean denying your scars. It means not letting them define your name. And yet, even in that peaceful new life, the past found its way back. In 2024, a true crime podcast did a deep dive on the Devlin case. It went viral, millions of listens. And suddenly, people started connecting the dots again. They found Shawn's new identity, his new location, his job, his friends, all exposed. Online forums lit up. TikToks analyzing his trauma went viral. Conspiracy theories bloomed, some claiming Shawn was secretly involved, others suggesting he had Stockholm Syndrome so severe he chose to stay. It was disgusting. And it forced Shawn to confront something he thought he'd outrun, being seen not as a man, but as a mystery. A symbol, a case file. One morning, walking to a cafe, he noticed a teenage girl filming him from across the street. Not even trying to hide it, just holding her phone up and whispering to her friend, "That's him." That night, he deleted his Instagram. Again. But this time, something inside him snapped. He was done hiding. 2 weeks later, Shawn agreed to do one final interview. Not with a news outlet, not with a podcast, but with a trauma therapist and filmmaker who specialized in restorative storytelling. It was raw, unedited, filmed in a single session. Just Shawn, sitting in a chair, speaking from the heart. And what he said left millions speechless. He talked about fear, not the fear of Devlin, but the fear of being forgotten. He said, "When you're taken like that, the world keeps spinning. But you don't. You're frozen in the moment you disappear. And when you come back, everything has moved on without you." He paused, looked straight at the camera. "I wasn't just kidnapped. I was erased. And for years, I tried to write myself back into the story of my own life." The video was watched over 30 million times in 3 days. Comments flooded in. Survivors, parents, strangers, all saying the same thing: "Thank you." It became clear that Shawn's true legacy wasn't just survival. It was language. He gave people the words for what they couldn't describe: the quiet grief, the stolen years, the complicated return. And maybe most important, he showed that recovery isn't linear. It's a spiral, a dance, a daily decision. Today, Shawn mentors kids privately, no headlines, no press. Just one-on-one. He helps them write their stories, literally. He teaches them how to journal, how to script, how to speak their truths aloud without shame. And those kids? They're healing, not because of a miracle, but because of a man who knows what it means to be lost and to be found again. In 2025, Missouri passed new legislation mandating trauma-informed training for law enforcement handling child abduction cases. It's called Shawn's Law. At the ceremony, Shawn didn't speak. He didn't need to. The law spoke for him. And now, every officer in the state learns his name not as a victim, but as a turning point. A reminder that behind every missing child report is a story worth fighting for. And sometimes, That story has a second chapter. It's strange how life works. How someone can be stolen from the world, forgotten, buried beneath layers of fear and silence, and still come back with something to give. Today, Shawn Hornbeck lives a quiet, intentional life. No fame, no followers, no interviews, just peace. He spends his mornings on walks with his rescue dog, Otis. He drinks black coffee from the same chipped mug he's had for years. He writes sometimes for others, sometimes just for himself. And most days, he doesn't think about Devlin, or the apartment, or the years that never came back. But every now and then, when the wind hits just right, when a certain song plays on the radio, or when he catches his own reflection in the window and sees the boy he once was, it all comes flooding back. Not as a nightmare, but as a reminder that he's here, that he made it, that he's more than what was done to him. Because at the end of the day, Shawn's story isn't about what happened in those 4 years. It's about what happened after. It's about the second life he built with his own hands, the lives he helped save, the silence he shattered, and the strength it takes to choose hope every single day. There's a photograph sitting on Shawn's bookshelf. It's faded, a little curled at the edges. It shows an 11-year-old boy on a green bike, grinning wide, wind in his hair. No idea what's coming. That boy is gone. But also he's not. He's still here, riding alongside the man who became his own rescue. The man who turned a tragedy into a legacy. The man who reminds us all that sometimes survival isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet. It's consistent. It's choosing to live, again and again. So if you're still here, still listening, still holding on to this story, remember this. There are people like Shawn walking among us every day. People who disappeared and came back. People who carry invisible weight with unimaginable grace. And maybe, just maybe, someone needs to hear what you've been through. Someone needs to know they're not alone. That healing is possible. That survival is strength. So keep going. Keep sharing. Keep living. Because just like Shawn, your story might be the one that saves someone else. You can now watch this next story right here.